Welcome to Magic Arcanum. I'm Ryan Gomez. Behind the scenes is Nicole Burdick, and we're so glad you're here because it's story time! Recently, I told you all what happens in Outlaws of Thunder Junction, and in that video, I named all of the people in Oko's gang, but I didn't really get into detail about who they were or where they were from. So the question today is, who are Oko's outlaws? To answer this, I thought it would be fun to pull up each character and discuss how well their card in the set reflects who they are and, what they do in the official story. I will be using TCG Home for this, which happens to be the sponsor of this video. TCG Home is a free web-based application that organizes your collection and provides a ton of useful information like card values and even Oracle text. And you can give individual cards custom tags, so I am putting Outlaw on everyone in Oko's gang so that later I can use that as a filter if I want to build a deck with any of these yahoos. Anyway, let's start with the ringleader himself, Oko, who is sadly no longer in the running for Father of the Year. Oko first appeared in Throne of Eldraine in October of 2019, but he's not from the plane of Eldraine. While he was there, though, he romanced a human woman, and she gave birth to a son named Kellen. More on him in a bit. Oko is a shapeshifter and a trickster, okay? He prides himself on being clever, and throughout the Thunder Junction story, he acts like he is one step ahead of everybody. His card captures this pretty well. He can shapeshift into a copy of a creature for your combat step, and his ability to draw and discard cards with the crime bonus tacked on there really feels like he is outsmarting people. The Elk token is a reference to his original Planeswalker card, but he doesn't really do anything quite like that in this story. It's just there to have some mechanical connection, and honestly, it strikes me as a bit of a meme at this point, but whatever. Oko was hired by Ashiok, who we know was really the Planeswalker Jace in disguise, and the job was to break into a mysterious vault and recover the treasure within. So to accomplish this, Oko assembled his own Rakish Crew. They include Tinybones the Pickpocket. This little skeleton is from Dominaria, specifically a region called Urborg. And all we really know about him is that he steals because he has a tiny family to feed. So his motives for being here are definitely money-oriented. In the story, Tinybones often disassembles himself. He uses his finger bone as a literal skeleton key to get the rest of the gang out of their handcuffs, or he just runs around acting as a nuisance, and his card is like 50-50 on that stuff. I mean, he can't reassemble himself as certain other skeleton cards in the game can, but his ability to steal things out of graveyards is kind of on brand for him, so I think overall this package works. Let's look at Eriette next, because she is really interesting to me. As a character, she first appeared in Wilds of Eldraine not that long ago, but she's also perhaps the most changed between her initial card and her newest one here on Thunder Junction. She went from a 2/4 to a 4/4, gained lifelink and a third color, but she is still mostly focused on auras and using those to gain an advantage over your opponent. Now, on her original card here, you can see her own reflection in her mirrored collar, and it is that of a much older woman, which implies to me that she only makes herself look young and beautiful, perhaps with an aura of some sort, which would explain her mechanical fascination. But here's the weird stuff, because on Thunder Junction, she acts like a much younger woman, moving in step with Annie Flash, fighting off guards with a knife at one point, I think, and generally not acting like a frail old lady, And people like to ask why Annie Flash didn't notice Ashiok was really Jace, but for me the question is, why didn't she notice Ariot was really an old woman? I don't know, I think that's kind of weird. Anyway, I guess we can look at Annie next, since she technically joins up and is part of Oko's Outlaws. Annie is a new character, and as I said earlier, she has a magical eye that can let her see through illusions, and somehow that became a small reanimation ability and the ability to play cards off the top of your own library. Honestly, I think her card is the most misaligned one here, right? I would have expected something that maybe let you target your opponent's stuff while ignoring hexproof or ward, for example, or maybe even just vigilance as her keyword instead of flash. I get that it's in her name, but she doesn't strike me as somebody who is jumping out of the shadows to surprise her enemies in the story. She's mostly watchful and protective of Kellen, and I don't think her card really captures any of that. Kaervek the Punisher. He was part of Magic's old stories, and I'm talking like Mirage in the late 1990s, to be clear. So he has been around for a very long time. However, he was frozen in an amber prison for most of that time. So now that he's free, he is looking to rebuild his power, and I suspect that is what Oko offered him to get him over here on Thunder Junction. In the story, we see Kaervek try to decipher the vault key, but he eventually has to hand it over to a real expert, and then near the end, he does break through some protective wards that were helping to seal the Fomori vault. So yeah, he doesn't really do much, and I think he's mostly here to set him up as a villain for later adventures. And his card is just a mix of the set's crime mechanic with a classic pay life to do something that Black is pretty well known for. It's not my favorite card in the bunch, but I do still like it more than Annie Flash. Satoru the Infiltrator. He's from Kamigawa, so Oko told him there would be cutting-edge technology to be found here on Thunder Junction, and that promise was enough to buy the services of this ninja rogue. In the story, he does do some sneaking around and some fighting, but he mostly just argues with Kaervek about which one of them is the bigger badass, and it's kind of funny, but there's never really like a payoff to that. Satoru was definitely designed to work with the ninjas of Neon Dynasty, which is kind of odd because that set wasn't supposed to still be in Standard now, so maybe they just really meant for him to be a commander card, but he's got a lot of support until we see rotation later this year, at least. He also gets wounded in the story and has to be patched up by the team's medic, which is Geralf from Innistrad. Geralf is a stitcher, meaning he assembles zombies out of spare body parts and then animates them, and he's always chasing a perfect design. So he'll add in wings or sharp claws or whatever he thinks will make his zombies superior. And to me, that is a fine reason to come to Thunder Junction. I'm sure Oko offered him all sorts of interesting corpses to experiment with. I mean, back home, he doesn't have access to goblins or sirens or scorpion dragons, so he's probably pretty eager to shop around for spare parts here in the desert. And his card can make zombies and then add counters to them, which feels like him upgrading them with extra appendages or whatever, so I think this is a pretty good fit for what we know about the character. Same story with his sister Gisa, who is a ghoul caller, and that means she reanimates existing corpses and tends to focus more on quantity over quality, strength in numbers. She tags along with her brother because she doesn't want him to die somewhere she can't mess with his corpse, and the two spend most of the story arguing and getting in each other's way, and that has been their dynamic ever since they appeared in flavor text together back in the original Innistrad block. Her card is also pretty darn strong and makes zombies 2 at a time while also making use of the crime mechanic, which does a pretty good job capturing her antagonizing nature in the story and her ability to create an army when the plot calls for it. Alright, Malcolm and Breeches come next, and we'll look at them one at a time. Malcolm first. So he was part of Vraska's pirate crew during our original visit to Ixalan back in 2017, And as a siren, he is the ship's lookout, flying ahead of, or at least above the ship itself, to watch out for danger or targets of opportunity, let's say. He comes to Thunder Junction because Vraska returned to Ixalan through an omen path and asked him if he wanted to come work with her again, and he eagerly said yes. And the same is true for Breeches, by the way, who is a goblin that loves explosions, and in the story he gets to blow up a bridge to stop a train, very similar to what he's doing in his own card art. His text box is kind of long, but does a really good job of capturing his somewhat unpredictable tendencies and his enthusiasm for destroying stuff. So overall, Malcolm and Breeches not only make sense for being here, but their cards are a great thematic fit as well. Which I guess brings us to Vraska the Silencer, the one who actually recruited the pirates. By this point, you either know Vraska or you don't, so I will not spend too much time on her history. I'll just say, as one of my favorite characters, I was really interested to see how she would look as a legendary creature rather than a planeswalker, and I think I'm pretty happy with the result. Turning your opponent's creatures into treasures when they die ties in pretty well with some of her previous planeswalker cards, but this version is somewhat special because those trophies keep all of their abilities. So if you kill your opponent's Shieldred, for example, you get to give them a taste of their own medicine when it comes to your side as a treasure, but now you gain 2 life every time you draw a card, and they lose 2 life every time they draw a card. And they'll have a harder time removing your treasure than you probably did removing their creature. Just don't spend your treasure on anything or you'll be doing them a favor. I'll probably end up trying to make a commander deck with this Vraska because I do really like her character, but I'm not sure what the deck will do other than be a removal pile and maybe have some death touchers and fight spells. So if you've got other ideas for me, leave them down in the comments, yeah? Okay, I think we've got 2 characters left, so let's get to it, starting with Rakdos the Muscle. He's a demon from Ravnica who loves to party, but I think he was getting bored with life on his home plane, and the Omen Paths presented an interesting opportunity for him. Toss in some hype from Oko, and we have a guild leader showing up for battle with a bandolier and cowboy boots, but whatever, it's fun. As an entertainer myself, I have always enjoyed the Cult of Rakdos, and seeing him here in the desert, laughing at Tinybones, well, that was one of my favorite parts of this story. Now, I've seen people ask, how big is he really? Because it seems like he shouldn't fit inside the saloon that Oko uses for a base, and that's true. In the story, Rakdos actually stays outside, and they just prop a door open for him so he can still be involved in the conversations. Also in the story, he is here to wallop people, and his card does that job pretty well. The fact that it can make itself indestructible technically allows it to defeat Akul and survive, while also being a nice way to commit a crime if that's something you need access to during a game. So yeah, he is strong, flexible, and has a good reason for being part of the crew. He's not looking for money, just something different than he will find on Ravnica, and he definitely gets that here. The last member of the gang is Kellen, who joins after meeting his father Oko and getting sweet-talked into signing up. Kellen is from Eldraine and has been seeking his father for the last couple of sets, so this was inevitable. And I like how his final card tells a story of its own. His original card, if you remember, had red in it because he was impulsive and aggressive, but by the end of his arc, he has calmed down a bit and found some maturity and adopted the colors green, white, and blue. He can fly now, and his Fey heritage gives him a way to benefit from plots like his old man, but without the need for crime. So those are the members of Oko's Outlaws, each chosen for their special skills, and each offered a reward they couldn't refuse. Who's your favorite? Let me know in the comments, and check out my link for TCG Home while you're down there. Remember, signing up is totally free, and it's easy to tag your collection and watch it grow in value as you add in your cards from Outlaws of Thunder Junction. Then make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the great stories you'll only find here on Magic Arcanum. We'll see ya!